We're going into space next, and never a straight answer group. Our galaxy, we are told this week, is filled with potentially habitable planets, at least 300 million of them, according to NASA this week. And the US Space Agency's Kepler Space Telescope spent 9 years on a planet-hunting mission, successfully identifying thousands of exoplanets in our galaxy before running out of fuel in 2018. But the original mission's core question remained how many of these planets are habitable. And scientists around the world have pored over Kepler's data for years, and they think they have found the answer. And according to research released in the Astronomical Journal, there are roughly 300 million potentially habitable worlds in our galaxy alone, meaning rocky planets capable of supporting liquid water on their surface. No shit, Sherlock. Welcome to Reality Land, NASA. Anyone else notice they throw these little truth nuggets out in times of the media being under stress? It's called distraction. Almost 100,000 alleged victims of sexual abuse within the Boy Scout of America have come forward to claim compensation from the group, and a lawyer for the plaintiffs called it the biggest ever US sexual abuse case, and the claims were filed ahead of a deadline on Monday. Now, internal files published in 2012 revealed decades of abuse. 2012 coming up a lot. Are we looping back again? BSA, which filed for bankruptcy earlier this year, common practice there, has apologised to victims, saying it was devastated. Negotiations will now begin between the alleged victims, the BSA, and their insurers. Now, the organisation still has a considerable membership, more than 2 million youth participants ranging in age from 5 to 21. But this is about half of what it was in the 1970s, a decline that aligns with mounting scrutiny of the organisation. And in February, BSA said it was filing for bankruptcy protection to be in a position to compensate victims. Now, the proceedings in a federal bankruptcy court will eventually lead to the creation of a fund to settle abuse cases that are upheld. And the attorney said to the news agency on Monday, it's by far the largest sexual abuse scandal in the US. And in terms of current reported numbers, it dwarfs similar complaints made against the Catholic Church in the country. Wow. I'm glad it's now being dealt with, but money alone will not fix the problem. Highlighting and reporting it will. Off to the Mississippi. The Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves has hit back against presumptive Democratic President-elect Joe Biden's plan for a 6-week COVID-19 lockdown, denouncing the plan as wildly unreasonable and vowing to fight that if necessary. Now, Reeves, who is a Republican, put his foot down in response to the proposed shutdown during a Facebook Live meeting, arguing the suggestion from one of Biden's expert pandemic advisors was totally and completely beyond reasonableness. That's not the way the economy works, he said, arguing that while Biden and his 13-person panel of scientific experts, 12 plus 1, might make policy recommendations regarding what to do during the pandemic, the presumed president lacked the constitutional basis to impose his advisors' desired crackdown across the nation. And he said, nor would Mississippi take Biden's edicts lying down, the governor hinted. We will certainly fight that if it becomes necessary. We as a state are going to continue with our strategy, he said, insisting a strategy targeted at hotspots was the only way to avoid extensive collateral economic damage. The people of Mississippi can't just go home, shut down their small businesses, shut down their restaurants, shut down their gyms for 6 weeks, and just think that you can come back 6 weeks from now, flip a switch, and everything's going to be fine. And I agree. And we need many more people to speak up now before the next phase kicks in. Candace Owens, she talks a bit of common sense, that woman. One hopes that she continues on that path. But on Sunday, she levelled harsh criticism against US intelligence agencies for their supposed inability to root out domestic terrorism while simultaneously being able to take out terrorists overseas. And she said, we're supposed to believe that our intelligence agencies can track and take out Iranian terrorist Soleimani overnight, but they can't manage to get to the root of Antifa and Black Lives Matter, who are well-funded domestic terrorist cells that have been operating unchecked for years. Now, the Iranian general Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, was killed in a US drone strike in Baghdad on January the 3rd. An administration official said the strike, authorised by President Trump, was conducted to deter imminent attacks on US interests. Now, Owens' comments follow an evening of unrest that came after the president's supporters were purportedly attacked at the so-called Million MAGA March in Washington, D.C. on Saturday, and many were quick to condemn the media's apparent lack of interest in covering the violence directed at supporters of Mr. Trump. And in a Saturday tweet in which Owen likened Black Lives Matter and Antifa to the absolute vermin of our society. Remember, Candace Owens is black, so that can't be labelled as racist. And she also called out the leftist-controlled media for giving them a free pass. They were created as the Marxist foot soldiers of the Democrat Party, she said, and given a pass by the leftist-controlled media. And she also tweeted that we should pray for this young woman who was attacked. And the tweet included a video of a young woman appearing to cry in fear as she, as another man, were hit with eggs and an assortment of liquids as they navigate through a fairly hostile crowd, I'm told. Well, I'm pleased she is speaking out. That's the second or third time she's spoken common sense. But she needs to understand, and don't presume that politicians know what we know, because they don't. But she has to understand the agencies are the problem behind it all. So you will not get any positive feedback or actions from that lot. They are the problem and always have been. And they have been running the quasi-government since their inception. And Soleimani was not taken out due to imminent attacks either. He was of a rival faction. California legislator. We read this out recently, and I'm going to read it again before I go into the next piece because it's linked. And it was said a California Superior Court ruled in favour of me and fellow legislator James Gallagher in our lawsuit challenging Gavin Newsom's abuse of power, and the judge ruled Newsom violated the Constitution by issuing Executive Order N6720. More importantly, she found good cause for an injunction restraining the governor from issuing any more unconstitutional orders. And the court rejected Newsom's extraordinary claim that a state of emergency centralises the state's powers in the hands of the governor. But this is the unlawful basis on which Newsom has collapsed California's systems of checks and balances and has issued 57 executive orders and changing over 400 laws. And it was said that this ruling marks an end to Gavin Newsom's one-man rule. Now, that was in our November 5th show, and one wonders how this latest news out of California will play out. Governor Gavin Newsom announced Monday he is sounding the alarm due to the fastest increase California has seen in coronavirus cases. As a result, nearly 3/4 of the state's counties must now operate under the state's strictest pandemic restrictions, and health officials are considering a statewide curfew. Really? And this will affect indoor dining, gyms and movie theatres, among other businesses. All must either remain closed or shut down in 41 of the state's 58 counties. Newsom said he anticipates even more restrictions coming this Friday. Now, in the last 10 days, the fake reports of new daily coronavirus cases have doubled across California, and it was announced that the state had reached 1 million total cases, which is a complete and utter lie. Now, the state, predictably, as forecast in the June show, when we read out the timeline, has blamed the increases on people who have grown tired of dealing with the pandemic and ignored public health warnings to avoid socialising with friends and family members. In addition, the following new rules were added on Monday to the blueprint for a safer economy: the state's 4-tiered colour-coded system for reopening. They do like their colour codes. Counties will now move tiers after 1 week of increased COVID cases, not 2. Counties can move back multiple tiers if they experience a significant increase. Businesses must shut down within 24 hours instead of 72 when counties move tiers. The state will announce tier changes twice a week instead of once per week. The governor's actions, which goes into effect or went into effect on Tuesday, will result in there being 41 counties in the most restrictive purple tier, 11 in the red tier, 4 in the orange tier, and 2 in the least restrictive yellow tier. Now, he's not alone. We've covered the West Coast clowns, of which Newsom is one of them, because he was joined by the governors of Oregon and Washington in issuing travel advisories that urge people to avoid travelling outside the state or country, and suggesting that those entering or returning self-quarantine in the hopes of slowing down the spread of a fake virus. One wonders what's going to happen next. Is that court, that legislator filed invalid? And why haven't the court stopped Newsom, if that's the case? In a significant breakthrough for vaccine research, a flu jab grown in plants has passed 2 large-scale clinical trials. Researchers extracted virus-like particles from tobacco plants to create the inoculation. And they used native Australian tobacco relatives that were genetically modified to create the viral proteins. And the two trials involved nearly 23,000 people, and the results indicated that the plant-derived vaccines are just as safe as current flu vaccines. The influenza virus poses fresh problems for vaccine developers every year as it constantly shapeshifts. The flu doesn't, just the recording of it does. And they said this is a massive undertaking, and researchers have been crying out for an upgrade to the current technology. Interesting terminology, that. And the breakthrough is the largest ever demonstration of the potential to produce vaccines using plants. Oh my. The irony of this piece, after telling us for 3 to 4 decades smoking tobacco is bad for you. Remember, tobacco was the original COVID. As every disease or illness became smoking related, and now they are using the plant to fight off the flu. It's Ouroboros thinking again. And to be clear, natural tobacco is fine. It's a higher frequency plant. Processed cigarettes are not, and neither is smoking pot. Just about the worst use of that plant. Well, the worst use.